I deliver an opening statement, often kind of summarizing the strongest theories of the case, the
Hmm.
best medical evidence as well to substantiate those theories. Very detailed and very thorough opening statement. I was always taught never waive an opening statement. I know a lot of attorneys and reps do. I just don't understand it, and I will forever and continue delivering very detailed opening statements. It's
Good for you.
incredibly impactful. And I've won quite a few hearings just giving my opening statement, and the judge comes on afterwards and says, "All right, I agree,"
Could,
and
could you
that's the
could
hearing.
you provide an example of an opening statement? What one like generically might be?
Yeah. So I might say, Mr. or Mrs. Such and Such deals with very disabling conditions. They suffer from the severe conditions of X, Y, and Z, rheumatoid arthritis, major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder. And then I jump into do they meet a listing? And I always try to allege some type of listing, but I will argue, do they meet a listing? Which a listing, step 3 in the disability process, is technically an automatic finding of disability. It is ultimately for the judge to decide whether you meet a listing, so I allege them, although I very strongly state that this is, the facts of the case rather than being an allegation.
Okay.
Uh, Run through all of the criteria and the medical evidence that best substantiates those listings. And then I run through all of the medical evidence I was able to find in the record, usually detailed also on my 10 to 12 page pre-hearing brief, why those symptoms substantially interfere with the claimant's ability to function day to day, whether it be mental functioning or physical functioning. And then I ultimately give a concluding statement stating, according to these regulations, SSR 96-AP, they are unable to sustain gainful activity on a full-time basis. These symptoms interfere with this. They meet this listing, this grid rule, and maybe even briefly recap and just say, the medical evidence substantially supports a finding of approval or a finding of disability in this case.
Excellent. All right.
So from the opening statement, that's where we go into questions. Sometimes the judge will start off with questions, and I try to prepare you for what questions the judge might ask. Most of the time, the judge just turns it straight over to me for questioning. And the questions that I ask, and one of the reasons why I spend 4 or 5 times the amount of time on prepping you for the hearing than a lot of attorneys and reps do, it's because I want you prepared for that. And I also want to know what answer am I going to get when I ask a question. I don't want to ask you a question and you give a bad answer. I don't want it to negatively affect your case. I only want to ask questions I know are going to make it more likely that you win your case. And I ask a lot of follow-up questions, really going into detail on how those conditions not only impact your ability to function day to day, but also on questions of what's called severity or frequency, uh, pace, and intensity. So that boils like often do they go frequency and length pace? How long do they for? If you have numbness and tingling, is that going to come about, once every week for 10 minutes? Is it once a day? Is it 10 times a day? How long does it last? Is it for 10 minutes? Is it for an hour? And how severe is it? Are you mildly in are you not able to use because the numbness and tingling is so severe you just can't do anything? And that's all those questions go on to, and we'll touch a little bit on that later.
All right.
So the judge
Michael, I just want to
also,
pause you for a minute and recap that section because there were some audio challenges. So your strategy in working with a client is they are aware of the questions that you will ask them and they're expected to give an answer that is in line with as you have instructed, which of course, from a credibility standpoint, is going to be consistent with their condition and medical. Is that right?
Yeah, that pretty much accurately sums it up.
Okay, great, good.